It's not as good as San Diego. But
We are live. It seems.
We're spoiled.
yeah, you're spoiled all around and fucking like with
That's
every
true.
type of food. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is true. In
Yeah,
everything.
Asian, yeah, Mexican, yeah, everything. It's fucking good. It's my favorite part about San Diego is eating.
That's my favorite
My
part.
favorite part everywhere, though.
Yeah, I was going to say it's.
I'm talking to Ted. Ted just distracted me about Google titles. I don't know if he's popping in right now, but I did send him the link. We're live, right? Yeah, we are.
Yeah, 35 seconds in.
All right, here we go.
Right.
I say we just act like we're not doing a show today. Just ignore everyone
and just talk.
Yeah. So
I made
Clint looks like he's up for it.
Why did I come
these
here?
people, he said.
Why did I come here?
That's what I ask myself every week.
What am I doing? Where is bad links? There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Bad links. We have a Google FAQ apocalypse. I don't know if it really is, but that's what I'm calling it today. All right. So I started talking to Clint about
when it's an FAQ apocalypse, I just call it FAQ.
Back me.
Back my life.
All right, we can stop playing with the joke there. But realistically, so that's what, let's see what they're saying. It was John Mueller basically being asked, can I get penalized for linking to an external site from the FAQ schema of a discounts voucher site? Thanks. Sure. Yeah, his answer was sure, dude.
I like the thanks. Sure. That's like a kid or answer my kid would give me. You want spaghetti for dinner? Sure.
Sure.
Fuck you, you're not getting anything. Yeah.
Let's look at the guidelines.
Answer.
What do you want to eat? I don't care.
Sure.
Sure. Well, his answers, people aren't understanding. His answers are actually very freaking telling, in my opinion.
The answer is maybe, maybe not, basically.
You start your own search engine journal then.
Hey, Ted did make it. Awesome.
Hey, there he is.
Wearing my favorite color.
He gives answers now that make sense because, like, he'll say, I don't know. He'll give answers like maybe because he doesn't really freaking know the answers to everything that the freaking tech will do, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I take sure as a yes, you can be penalized. You might not.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say the same. If you're stupid and you do something dumb, then sure, you can get a penalty.
Yeah.
I just take it as him just like responding to kind of an asinine question, and as though the person is asking, hey, can I get a penalty for this? And he's like, yeah, we'll give you one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whatever you want.
Just for asking that question. Here goes.
Shoot me, PM me a link. I'll make sure it gets done.
Exactly.
So the guidelines for schema are for the FAQ page. Let's see. I know you could probably quote this, Clint, but I definitely can't. An FAQ
guidelines. So.
Yeah, I mean, you sure you don't follow what Google says all the time?
Not at all.
I mean, that's how you do SEO, is you listen to their terms of service, bro.
No, that's Ted. That's Ted and Kyle. They're white hat SEOs.
An FAQ page written by the site itself with no way for users to submit alternative answers. So that's a valid case. A product support page that lists FAQs with no way for users to submit alternative answers. Valid.
I never have a way for anyone to submit anything.
Modify your website for you.
Yeah.
XSS me. Let's do some cross-site scripting, babies.
Yeah.
A forum page, these are invalid use cases. Forum pages where users can submit questions or submit answers to a single question. A product support page where users can submit answers to a single question. And a product page where users can submit multiple questions and answers on a single page. So they're telling us what they don't want us to spam their site type with, the site type of like question and answer, like Quora and all that, question Yahoo answer type crap. I don't know, Clint, like with these use cases here, do you think that these do you think these guidelines actually cause anything for somebody in this case here? Like if they would be doing something outside of those guidelines right there with like a forum page or a product page or a support page?
If they actually enforce this, 99% of us that are using FAQ schema would be in trouble because it's designed literally for an FAQ page. And when they launch this out, Mueller was quick to point that out. This is for an FAQ page. It's not for a random page that you have frequently asked questions on. It's for an FAQ page. And unfortunately for them, and good for us, is well, I won't necessarily say good, but they created that people also ask rich snippet. Use your content to keep people on the search engines so that they don't have to go to your thing. Right. And that's where they're leveraging FAQ to pull that stuff out, right? So you can kind of grab it and play with it and kind of not, right? So that's kind of why I ignore this, because it's, they've written this in such a way that they could penalize anybody using FAQ if they're not on an FAQ page and they're not doing it. They're just leveraging it in a different way. So.
Yeah, I mean, they've written it looks like, especially if you look at the valid use case here, the question is visible on the page and the answer is hidden behind an expandable section. That is people also ask right there. That is one of the things we've talked about in the past few weeks is kind of like how they like to use their own internal metrics to kind of sort and build their universal search. And so I agree. They built this so that they can do what they want.
But the thing is, though, Mike, is too, like, when you click on an FAQ result, you're going into the page, so you're expecting a drop down, but it takes you to the page in a lot of cases that I've seen. So when you have
there is
a
hack there, out there too. That's also for that. So I would argue that it might not always be on purpose. So. And what they're talking about there is tabbed content, right? You either you show the hidden content or not in the tab thing, and then that little drop down thing.
But I mean, I'm talking about it in the SERPs, though.
So what happens?
Yeah, but we're talking about FAQ on a page, not on the SERPs.
What happens when the formal specification for the schema disagrees with Google's rule set? Because question and answer schema allows for question and answer websites. There's even markup for selecting the best answer. And if Google's saying they don't want Q&A websites using FAQ schema, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like, who actually decides what the standard is?
Well, schema.org is there for the standard. However, Google has adapted to it and changed some of their stuff. So, but question and answer schema is specifically for those sites. Like, what is that? Fucking Quora? Is that it?
Yeah, Quora.
Yahoo Answers, that thing where you have one page that answers asks one question, and then you get all these answers.
Well, based on that guideline, if we read that guideline, where it says product page in forum, can it submit answers to a single question? To me, that reads like a Quora page, dude.
No, that's a Q&A. If you open the Q&A one, you'll see a distinct difference.
I gotcha.
The Q&A is for Quora, where they get one page.
You were saying Q&A, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, makes sense. I thought you were saying FAQ. My bad.
But what's really the point of having that if it's not going to display in the SERPs? Because like if you get the FAQ schema on there, you take up more real estate, and so it's actually part of that website though. So that comes from the schema, right?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, what's the point, is those schemas are probably one of the few that tested to actually boost your ranking based off the content that's inside of them.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Whether you get the rich snippet or not, you should be using those schemas if it applies to your page.
Here's the thing: we're basically, to me, that makes a lot of sense, and to say it that way, because the broad match world that we're in, the way that they display pages for different queries and things, it's a question world, right? So we can look at it like a profile-based SEO, and the profile of the user has questions about product. They have questions about the brand. They have questions about freaking everything. So it would lend to itself that anything relating to identifying questions easier, delivering answers easier would equate to a lot of emergent factors and direct factors, in my opinion. So that makes a lot of sense. The interesting thing is that if you look at the guidelines and you look at the SERPs, I do think that they're breaking their guidelines. So
I mean, they never said they had to stick to them, right?
Well, that's my point. Is I like what Clint said about the fact that if everyone using it and where we're using it and where other people are using it, that we could have issues with it. So I think we get back to that sure answer. It's like sure, but what's the fucking point of talking about this? When it comes to this, Ted, so we were talking about before you jumped on, can I get penalized for linking to an external site from the FAQ schema of a discounts vouchers site? Thanks. And the answer was sure. And I do think that's a loaded freaking question, like a huge loaded question, because how are you linking? What are you linking? What are you doing? Like, there's a lot there, but what is your input on the sure that he gave? Do you think he is giving a sure, like, it could happen, a sure it might happen, I don't know, a sure, like, go away because they're being a dick? Like, what are your thoughts there, dude?
He's saying it's possible. Like, it could fail manual review if it looks sketchy enough. There is a universe in which that would happen. Now, the real question is, how likely are you to ever be penalized for something as small as a link on an FAQ schema or, a coupon site? And the odds are very unlikely. Like, I don't think those things happen very often, and it's usually narc SEO when they do, or it's the most egregious case in history that got caught and made the news. In general, I think it's very hard for an average website and just conducting their normal everyday business to get in trouble with the links they put, in the process of doing their normal everyday business. I think most of the time there is never a person at Google that is aware of your website, and that's the way you want it, because there are way too many websites for the humans at Google to know of them and dislike them and want to punish them. That's not what's happening here.
When you get on someone's radar, whether it's a competitor or somebody on a quality team or their spam team, it's a very different rule set at that point from what is happening in the algorithm.
Yeah, and I think the sure that John Mueller said here was kind of probably more along the lines of, a manual review context than the algorithm is out there, scouring coupon sites looking for people to punish. I don't think that's what's happening.
Right. No, if they were, then practices would change and people wouldn't be doing certain things because they would need to be different. I agree. Absolutely agree with that. I'm going to drop that share real quick, or that screen real quick, and then we'll go on. Let's see. All right. So
nice looking crew.
URL parameters. There's talk about URL parameters being unnatural, and that links to URL parameters are unnatural or could cause issues with the linking penalties. And we're talking about
UTMs.
Yes, exactly. So I'd like to address this one because that's an interesting thing for people to be thinking there, because that happens very naturally throughout the web.
You would destroy the Google ecosystem if you did away with URL parameters.
Yeah.
Google advertising is built on them.
Yep.
So let's talk about when they can become an issue for people then. Like, when can a URL parameter become an issue for people if it's not an unnatural link issue, right?
When you fuck up the URL and you get a 404?
Well, the way you typically shoot yourself in the face with URL parameters is you engineer your website in such a way that Google can do an infinite crawl. And so the number one way that they become a problem is faceted navigation, where Google was already crawling your categories and finding all your product pages. That was an efficient way for Google to get all your pages indexed. Now Google is visiting your category, sorting by price, ascending, then price descending, then sorting by size, extra large, then resorting the category by size, medium, and it's rediscovering the same pages over and over and over and over again. So in Google Search Console, you get these effects where you have a website with 500 categories and 25,000 products, but Google thinks you have 500,000 pages indexed. Now, they're all duplicate content because they're different URLs leading to the same products, leading to the same categories.
And where it can become, I've seen it a lot lately with certain CMSs.
Shopify
with canonical issues. Yes, with actually with mismatched canonical in the faceted navigation as well, which becomes even more of an issue when it's actually it's creating its own canonical for the page target itself rather than the actual canonical URL.
Yeah, and when this happens, when Googlebot gets into an infinite crawl of your website, what Googlebot will do is they will quit. That's that crawl budget concept. And when it's an infinite crawl and Googlebot quits, what you end up getting is about 5% of your site indexed. So if you fix the infinite crawl, you get 100% of your site indexed. So 5 versus 100 is a big difference.
I'm sure that you're seeing them drop product and 404 product and de-index product and no follow product because of this as well. Because they will stop crawling, but I've seen it where if it's not bad enough to stop the crawl, that they'll just start dropping some of your pagination out or your faceted out, and you're just not getting credit for the relevance or the associations there at all.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts there?
I love seeing custom online stores because you can do something about it quite easily. I wish the platform stores like Shopify and all those other off-the-shelf store platforms, I wish they would do something about it. There should be a setting, but there isn't. But there should be a setting that says if it's Googlebot, don't even display faceted navigation.
I agree 100%.
Give them an option to crawl it. Just don't even draw it on the page.
I think it would be better to just associate the selections with the individual page and not give the faceted navigation. It should not be delivered to the bots. It should not be delivered to the spiders.
And I've seen it in the past with various stores too. If you build your cart functionality based on links instead of form buttons, you can get into infinite crawls where Google is going through your store and adding products to the cart, removing product from the
Absolutely.
cart. Different product.
It's hilarious.
It's an infinite crawl of interaction with the shopping cart. Same thing. Google eventually quits with 5% of the site index, but you look at your web logs and you see Googlebot adding and removing from the cart.
The most recent one I saw was a serious, it was gross negligence on the developer's part, and it was extremely, extremely detrimental to the point where they were actually not able to index anything. It was nutty. When I jumped in there for a buddy and I threw my bots on and I started crawling, I went back about 7 hours later to see where the progress was for, I had checked what the product count, what the page counts would be. And when I jumped in, what I saw was I was at about 80,000 pages. And it was a single page that they had created with a faceted navigation where they did some stuff that was interesting. We actually at one point, I sniffed the server because at one point they were doing some things that were actually causing orders to not be able to be fulfilled by the users as well. So there was a disagreement. So it almost looked like they were doing these things on purpose, that they were doing something funky server side to screw with the transactions and to play around. And once I got in there and we looked around, it was really just gross negligence. And that was a WooCommerce store, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It was either Shopify or WooCommerce. I believe it was WooCommerce that one was.
The third most common way that people shoot themselves in the foot with URL parameters is creating homegrown origin tracking. So what they're trying to solve with it is they're trying to say, I need to know when somebody added this to cart, what page was it from and what page did they come from? And so they're putting these origin tracking codes in the URL so they can connect those dots and figure out what led to a sale. And what ends up happening with those origin codes in the URL is you have a product page, and now all of a sudden you have 25,000 different origins in the URL for that product page. You've blown up duplicate URLs times 25,000. Now, in theory, you can put a canonical tag and eliminate a lot of this. But that's only a suggestion on Google's side, and sometimes they do the right thing, sometimes they don't. You could also, I know in the old Search Console, you could restrict different URL parameters, tell Google to ignore them. And that was always precarious. So engineers who develop these quagmires say, no, don't worry about it. You can ignore it in Search Console.
You can't count on that.
Yeah, but so what about so I mean then you got to no index them. That's another option.
Well, the way that blows up in your face is you have to tell Google to ignore the parameters, and the very next website redesign you do, nobody's going to remember it. And so it's all going to explode in your face again. It's a ticking time bomb when you solve it that way.
I ran into that in 2005 or I think it was 5. We had to rewrite 1.7 million URLs, and it took us 6 months to move this site to the news. It must have been a little bit later than that, because it's really when they started having issues with the parameters in the URLs, and we really needed to make the switch over to like what's called SEO friendly URLs at this point. And so we had to move off of a bunch of parameter based stuff off of a custom CMS. And I swear there's still from back then, there are still issues that will pop up from that move and before that move that just haven't been a problem yet, but will become a problem down the line. And it's one of the reasons why I have a love-hate relationship with custom, and I have a love-hate relationship with out of the box, stuff as well. And maybe that's just because I'm lazy.
I've experienced a lot more issues with custom than I have out of the box, unfortunately, though.
And then the thing is,
depends on who's doing the custom work, and if they know what they're doing. Yeah.
When you have a good team,
I would trust Ted to do it, but not many others.
Well, if you have a site that's built in like, a PHP site that dynamically creates brand new pages for every unique query that's typed into the search box, then it's never ending. Like the site just keeps on growing and growing. And though I've run into sites like that where then we had to actually use the Google's URL parameter, restriction, and that seemed to work in there. But like ultimately, you'd want to get that problem fixed to where, let's say you've got filters or like through the faceted navigation. So I think you end up just breadcrumbing it and then give Google something that's breadcrumbed out where, there is really all pages lead back to whatever's canonicalized, right?
Yeah, and it's a trade-off. I'm not recommending one over the other, but, generally the trade-off is an off-the-shelf store will be more modern and cheap than you would typically build in-house.
So I like them modern and cheap.
But it'll always be 60% of what you wanted.
Yeah, I know that's right.
Versus custom, which you have options to fix things, but it's easier to shoot yourself in the foot. You reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, it's true. And that's why for most people at the small business, they come to me, they go, I need a website. Just go to WordPress, because I know that they don't have a clue what they're doing. And at least you can look at it like there's support for WordPress, because there's so many people using it and writing things for it that it's easy to get someone rolling on WordPress without a lot of headache. If someone needs just a friend needs
there was a guy in the neighborhood recently that was asking, he's like, pretty much, how do I get a website up and running? And I said, what do you need it for? He said, well, his kids go to a charter school, and pretty much all they're doing right now is they're like if someone wants to donate to the school, they have a Square account, and somehow they like arranged it where they can do that. I was like, well, yeah, you can. I was like, what are you wanting to do with it? He said, well, that and announcements, stuff like that. I was like, okay, so you're going to need to continually update it. yes. I was like, and you're going to have probably like one of the moms at the school do it, correct? Uh-huh. I was like, for the love of God, use WordPress. I was like, I can help you set it up. I can help you find a host, everything like that, and get it registered, everything. I was like, but for ongoing maintenance, if you want to continually do that, I'm not gonna, yeah, don't do that either. Yeah, because I don't want to provide support. So I was like, I'll help you get it up and running. I'll help you get it hosted, all that stuff. I'll even like put the content on it and get it set up and do some videos showing how to add the updates and everything. But yeah, for the love of God, go with WordPress for in that instance.
God, I gotta wonder how much time certain people, like, I know I give away a lot of time to people when they need help, and it sounds like Brad's doing that too. Does everyone else give away help and advice for the people they meet in their life? And how much time do you spend giving free SEO and tech to
honestly, yeah, in our neighborhood though, it's pretty cool because you've got these, like this dude's a CPA, so I'm like, hey, I just bought a new car. If I set up a site about that specific model, I'm able to write that off, right? He's like, yeah, for sure. So like just that reassurance helps me out. I got another a guy that specializes in cars in the neighborhood. He's about to help me sell one of my cars for what I bought it for 5 years ago. So like it helps to know people, and you put that out and it'll come back. Plus, I'm excited that anyone's fucking asking me outside of the internet people, you know, like anyone in the real world, like, they're like, what do you do for a living? I tell them like, cool. And then they fucking run, you know, where, you know, it's nice to be needed. You know, I keep telling you that, like, you know.
It is nice to be needed, and
Yeah.
you're needed.
Yeah, thank you.
How does 301 redirecting the URLs affect issues with changing URL structures, migrating from one CMS to another? Do you mean what the like? I guess I don't understand the question 100%. Like what the
maybe if he's compacting the site, or you know, getting rid of extraneous pages as he transfers from one site to another. Is how I would take it. Yeah.
I can tell you what to expect. If it's an e-commerce site and you're changing all the URLs and you execute it flawlessly, you do the perfect transition and no big problems.
Which happens every time.
If you were getting $100,000 in organic revenue off of that website, odds are you're going to lose about $15,000 of it on the change. So it's 15%. Not something you want to do often. You will eventually rebound, but you should expect to take that hit each time you do it.
We've seen that with clients in the substance abuse space. They were gung ho on a redesign. We told them, for the love of God, just leave it. It's converting. It's doing well. We're pumping out everything. No, we want to do a redesign. Okay. And then not your. It wasn't your client. It was a past client. I know who you're talking about, but yeah. No, it was not him. I can assure you. But yeah, it's all they want to do is get into that dev loop. We've had it in what was that other
almost one? Everything that we've touched with like larger scale client work.
The Nutrafol one was the best one that I've ever seen go through, but Mike spent a ton of time on it. What was the other one that happened with? I can't remember. But yeah, it was all they wanted to do was redesign.
Anytime you trigger a rescoring for your site like that, or you know, you change something drastic like that. John Mueller said this interestingly recently, because he confirmed that 100% page rank will pass through a 301, right? But he also said that it might take us a year to really believe it and do it. You know, and so when you are changing everything, it's really important to remember you're not just moving the URL now. You've like probably made changes to the page, which is going to interfere with how people interact with the page. Like you're rescoring literally everything that. And they can see this. They can see absolutely everything. They're freaking internal, all knowing, whatever. I'm not saying they use it all, but when you change little things, other issues emerge that you're not even aware of, in my opinion.
It algorithmically, say that slow so I can get it out, triggers, you know, a rescoring. So, and then no one at Google sees it, but yeah, it'll flux.
I had mentioned it to Clint and before I think anyone jumped on, but then I had messaged you as well because I saw someone pop up with some statements that I haven't seen in my campaigns or any of the campaigns I'm like touching right now about titles. My stuff is pretty much page wide. If it does get rewritten, it's based on the page itself rather than the query itself. But Ted, you said you might be seeing something a little bit different than that, or what? What are your thoughts on this right now, dude?
Well, we're seeing two fundamental behaviors, and it's important to call them out as different. So one of which is Google sees the title you specify and thinks it isn't right,
Good enough.
It isn't good enough, and makes changes, and that's title rewriting. And what I'm currently researching is volatility, and title rewriting by itself doesn't cause volatility, doesn't cause your rankings to go up and down, up and down, up and down. It may impact your rankings in that you used to rank better, but if Google changes the title and sticks with it, that's not volatility. That's just they made a change and stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's happening in titles at the same time is Google is split testing different versions of titles. So when there's multiple choices Google can pick from and they all score relatively the same, Google is split testing 2, 3, sometimes 4 versions of a title for a given page. And this happens within a minute. Like if you check 20 times a minute, you'll see these 2, 3, 4 different versions of the title.
I'm running some scrapes right now that I'm seeing the same stuff, Ted. And so I can confirm this here. But here's my question for you, because the way I see it, and this could be confirmation bias, I'm a person, right? I see that it's not query based even when they're split testing. It's more of if you're too broad or you're not spot on with your optimization, then they start to split test, and it's page based even though it's changing. So you might see it as query based when you do a different query, but they're split testing is what I'm seeing. So is that what
if you have relatively close but different keywords on the page, you can see it pick different text. So it can be query based. And it's definitely page based. So it's 100% page based, and it's some of the time query based. The other thing is that they're doing versions. So we'll see this often with publish dates on really old sites that haven't changed. Google will be showing 2 different titles from that page that were a day apart, and we can tell they were a day apart because of the publish date in the title from 4 years ago. So Google has this remarkably long memory and is split testing versions of a title from 4 years ago that were a day apart. And so what that tells us is that you have to be very mindful of the dynamic text that you're putting in, because Google's been doing split testing on that page for 4 years, and those 2 different versions, one ranks 5 positions higher than the other one. For 4 years, that page has been going up 5, down 5, up 5, down 5. And if you don't have that dynamic text in there, Google won't split test on it.
It's interesting. It's going to be, I'm really looking forward to having some conversations next week about this directly, because I've been watching some really interesting things. And you'll see like my methodology while we're there next week, and how I kind of use Google as like, let me throw shit at the wall and then figure it out and make money off of it, And what you're saying, I've noticed, and it has impact, especially on the people that are really into content velocity and AI right now, and that backlinks aren't, important and this and that, like, because they're not realizing that those titles are affected by your link profile and the pages that link to you, as well as the page itself. And they're not paying attention to the fact that, okay, I can do this and leave it alone, and I never have to go back to this, and I never have to go look at it again.
Well, the problem right now is people didn't anticipate it. They kept the publish dates, they kept the product counts, they did all these things outside of the title tag, and usually they put it in a heading. The problem is Google is now picking the headings that now have these publish dates and product counts in them.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what's interesting is that they've rolled this out in their ads platform a couple of years ago as a beta. So what happens when you're creating a new ad, you can do like 10 different headings. It's called dynamic search ad. So what it does is you'll have like 10 different titles, and Google will swap them around. And this is for the same ad. The old text ads where you come up with the exact content you want for the title, they're phasing that out in June of next year. So you're not going to even be able to be in charge of what you write for the title of your own ads. You're going to have to give them at least 8 or 10 different titles that you're going to have for your ads. So
where do you think they're testing that, Corey?
Exactly.
Here's something I'm going to make another point about universal search, right? They have an ad system that people pay for that they've been perfecting based on click-through rate, quality score, everything for years and years. We know that they take, like I say it again, I keep preaching this shit, video search, image search, books, everything. They look at the usage of those and they build a SERP in the organic page based on the usage of this content. And that's how they determine what's going into this organic page, right? So I think it's extremely important, and we'll get into this more and more, and we'll beat it around next week. But what you have to say about traffic and the way the AdWords platform works, to me, is very important. Like, I started testing user metrics in 2012, CTR and things like that. That's been that's 9 years now that I've been looking at these user metrics and gathering data and paying attention to what the clickstream does and how the funnel works. And I am very confident at this point, even like I was in 2014, saying that quality score is very similar to the AdWords quality score. And I'm not saying there's one-to-ones here. I'm not saying that if you understand one, you understand the other. But there are technologies that they use to build their recommendation engine. And that is, in my opinion, what Google is a recommendation engine that is doing that based on demographic profiles, right? And that's how personalization works. That's how a whole bunch of other shit works. Now, there's a whole bunch of tech that goes with it, and you have to have the tech and you have to have the data. But the broad overlook of what they're doing with the factors that they have available to them is actually really interesting. And there's tech that they've talked about for a long time that we'll talk about next week that they're way far beyond, but it lays out how they might be doing some of this stuff. So it's going to be really fun to have everybody in the same room and tear this apart, man. I'm really looking forward, Corey. Like, what are some of the things you're doing with ads right now that we're going to be going into next week, bro? Because, I'm seeing direct correlations in my campaigns with how I run my traffic, bang, spot on, dude. Like, ranking with it and just moving shit around and losing ranking, and I can see the clickstream data when I look at it in everything that I'm looking at all the time. And so how are you seeing it with your campaign? Because I know you do a lot of the same thing where you're doing SEO and paid traffic directly together at the same time. What are your biggest takeaways so far that you think we should be covering next week, man?
Well, it's definitely some of the things that I'm going to be covering is taking the SERP information and running it through some, let's say you take a particular query that you are, let's say you're selling something, take the sites that are ranking for that. I'll scrape all the keywords and then see what they're in the top 10 for, sort out, any of the garbage keywords, but all the things that have any kind of intent behind them at all. And then creating, so right now, you can still create single keyword ad groups. So I'm doing it. I'm actively doing it. I'm testing it to try to come up with some, something a little more scientific. But taking all of these keywords, dropping from Keyword Cupid, I'll get campaigns. So instead of like a content cluster, I get a campaign. And this is the name of the campaign is the broad match idea. And then here's all the single keyword ads that are actually going to go in there. So, and what it's referred to as a SCAG. So a single keyword ad group, which is where you have one exact match keyword that this ad group, instead of having 10,000 ads within one ad group, you have one ad group. The ad group is actually named the keyword. And so all this helps your click-throughs, and you get your cost per click a lot lower doing it that way. But on top of that, I've known this, and I've done this since the beginning. When I started, before I started SEO, I was doing this. After I started SEO, I recognized that when you bring a site into Google's ecosystem, no matter how you do it, you're giving Google a whole ton of data and trust, and then they're getting that referral traffic, and now they're able to interact with the user from their ads platform directly onto your website. So I brought brand new sites into being in the top 100 within 30 days, just sending some paid traffic to it. I'll get a couple solid links, but I mean, I brought one a national site from nowhere in the top 100. He was a brand new site into ranking in the top 10 in about 4 months, just with some limited paid traffic that were just hyper focused to the actual keyword. So Google is paying attention, and it's all. I
assume those keywords were converting then.
They work.
That's the beauty of paid, and that's the thing. And I think people forget with the whole content velocity thing. And I'm not saying content velocity sucks this or that. If you buy a paid ad, you're going to pay attention to how it converts. You're going to make sure that you work on it. And I think SEOs right now as a whole, or like a large portion of SEOs that I see in my little drop of the internet, I should say, they'll throw up content and forget that it's actually kind of just like an ad, and that Google is a place that displays a piece of content to a user, potentially for that user to click on, to come to your website and to convert. And so when you throw something up and you forget about it and you don't optimize it, like SEO optimization should be optimization and ongoing, then you start to see the traffic trickle off and never convert once you've thrown it up. It's not difficult to get ranking right now. I think people are starting to have a harder time with actually converting their traffic and actually turning that traffic into paid users rather than just a visit.
Yeah, CRO is the new SEO these days. It's like,
well, I'm not going to say that, but I'm definitely not going to say that. I mean, even from a click-through standpoint, that people will throw shit up, get visibility. And I don't know, Ted and Clint, you guys define visibility versus ranking as something different, because I do.
Well, on the SEO CRO debate, SEO is an input. It's one of several inputs into CRO. CRO is what you do with that traffic. And that traffic can come from emails. It can come from social media. Yes. It can come from lots of places. CRO will optimize all of it. SEO is just one piece of the input that CRO will use. And I think that you do have to look at CRO because that's the efficiency at which you take people's money, and you want to be very efficient at doing that. If you add friction, people will respond by not giving you money. What's that?
I said a lot of SEOs forget the money part of it. They just want to circle jerk with the rankings reports and then forget that the ultimate goal is to make money out of this stuff.
Yeah, you got to make money. I mean, that's how you pay the bills. That's how you get the Lambos. That's the dream, right?
That's not how Mike pays the bills, but we can't get into that. This is a family show.
A lot of SEOs also think they're good at copywriting. CRO are qualified to talk to business owners about how to do their sales and all that shit too. And they're not even close. And they have no business.
I realized 5 or 6 years ago that I was horrible at it. So I had to study just to be mediocre, just to get to that level.
Yeah.
So.
You won't catch me falling into that trap when people start talking about it. I'm like, you know what? I know a guy.
Yep.
It's just not my thing, man. I mean, I'm very specific in what I pay attention to, and if I'm specific in what I pay attention to, I can't do everything else well. I mean, maybe to get it done, but
that's my CRO process is look at the competition, see what they're doing. Let's try that shit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we could be doing, and based off of our experiences and stuff, as you get more experience, you can make more intelligent CRO decisions. Mm-hmm. But we're SEOs, so our job is to get rankings in order to get traffic. And then it's the website's job or the CRO's job to turn that traffic into leads. and then it's the sales guy's job to turn those leads into sales. So
Yeah.
SEO
I mean, if I
that-
see something from a common sense perspective, like the nutraceutical company we were working with, we were pumping out, content for them. We were actually in the beginning of the campaign, we were going through a ton of their old content.
Just internal linking.
Yeah. Going through the old content with, and reorganizing it and everything and adding, statistically improbable phrases, stuff like that to get them to boost up. Like Mike said,
I love that way
internal
you say
linking.
that, bro. I statistically improbable phrases.
That's a Jimmy term, and it's all
Is it
Cognitive
really?
does. Yeah, it's a Jimmy term.
I just call them match words or transformer match or broad match.
SIPs. Honestly, statistically improbable phrases sounds impressive as shit if you're
Like
on a
Brad
client call.
Brad is nice.
Yeah.
Brad is
Brad's
nice.
always
Statistically
nice.
improbable.
Brad is hey, but on that, just on a note on that CRO, like one of the things that to pay attention to is, and it sucks for advertisers if we're doing this all the time, but these guys are spending money. They're in the campaign, paying attention to this page and this campaign every day or at least weekly. And they're looking at the page. Is the page converting? What are they A/B testing? So the top ranking ads are typically going to be the guys that are spending the money because the ad is converting, and go through and take a look at some of them. And some of them are going to be garbage, but that's where you're going to find, because you don't have to really do the same amount of work on a page. If all you want to do is get the CR going, it's not going to have the same content and layout as something that's been SEO'd in order to rank. So take some of those elements, especially, what's above the fold. What are you seeing above the fold on these pages? And that'll give a pretty good idea of what these guys are doing to actually, get stuff to convert quickly.
Well, and the correlation between those
that
elements,
much quicker. Yeah.
the correlation between those elements and then what is in that SERP too is something that people, in my opinion, really do need to pay attention to. Because I don't know, Ted, like, how do you feel about like the way I look at it, or Clint, anyone actually, I look at it and I go, okay, here's a page. I have no clue what Google might think is quality if I'm in this new market. I have no idea. I have a general idea of what I need to do, but I have no idea specifically what they might make decisions on when it comes to the thousands of things that I can't think about that they might look at. And I look at it like that. And I basically try to craft what I'm seeing. And I think the only way to do it properly is by looking what's already working, in my opinion.
I think that's right. From the standpoint of the buckets of factors that exist, we know that there's authority and relevance and quality and trust, and there's some performance-based factors. So there are these generalized buckets, and we are very good at finding quantifiable, measurable things for relevance and for authority. And we have a few tantalizing clues in the trust area, and we have some disclosures about page speed and core web vitals and other types of performance things, and they all matter to differing amounts. What we don't have is a good idea on how to quantify and measure quality and expertise. Those are the buckets where we're largely kind of in the dark about how do you bring out a yardstick and say this page has 11 quality and this page has 26 quality. That, in our industry, we don't know how to do well. And I'm open for ideas because I try to measure everything.
Well, to me, I look at it like based on the knowledge domain that is there, and I really do believe it's query specific. Like, that's where I fall in that camp, is that changes on an individual basis. Not necessarily saying all the time in every industry, but I do believe that they're building their results in a very customized manner based on profiles is where I lie. And so I don't think we have a good answer other than what is happening in that SERP right now, and not being that SEO that looks at it like, okay, Google is doing this wrong. These aren't the right authority pages that are ranking on page one, which I still see a lot of right now, of people saying, well, my traffic's down, but Google's ranking all this irrelevant crap on page 1 now. So, but that's where I think people get into the trouble.
They see it as relevant if they're ranking them there, or I mean, as they adjust at that moment in time.
I think that go ahead, Ted.
The other problem is, the classic pizza topping problem. You get 10 people in a room, you say we're ordering one pizza, what toppings should be on it? And,
pineapple.
Somebody's always going to fuck up your pizza.
Yes.
With pineapple.
I don't. For anyone out there getting mad and closing the broadcast, I don't put pineapple on my pizza. So it was a joke. I don't want to piss anyone
off. My
wife
does, and my daughter does.
I knew I didn't like her. I'd rather have broccoli than fucking pineapple.
So how can Google get the toppings right for everyone? It's a very complicated problem.
Veggie.
I think we have very educated ways to gather data and to make very educated decisions in our campaigns on a lot of different things, but we have to be, especially in this industry, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think that mentality is much needed in the SERPs when you're hitting certain things and then you see what should be working. And the definition of insanity, don't keep trying the same thing when it's not working. Maybe think outside the box and open up your eyes to a tool that can gather data like Cora and make sure that that the tools you are using and the data that you're using is good data. And
something I've been thinking about taking recently is Google has a data analytics course. I feel like that would be interesting.
I love
just to go
analytics.
through it. But I feel like that should probably be a foundation of like any person getting into SEO. And it's only I think
so. Absolutely.
The only thing is from a time perspective, it's going to take a chunk of time. I think they said 6 months, 10 hours a week or something, like either 5 or 10 hours a week. It only costs $300. So that's
as somebody, if you're leading SEO, if you're in charge of making sure you have good SEO with people underneath you, I think you have to be able to review data, because you can be an SEO tech and know how to build some links, right? You still should be able to
order
analyze some data there to be able to look at what's going on, but not being able to analyze data scares me if people are taking clients and they're not analyzing data. That terrifies me a little bit. I think that's a disaster recipe personally, but.
Wait, don't you hire contractors who refuse to use tape measures?
Mm-hmm.
Right? To build my home and don't bring any tape measures.
There's not a straight line in Mike's house.
Here's the plan.
Mike's sitting here like this. He has to turn the camera and kind of sit sideways. So, his wife designed it. It's like a very Van Gogh-esque.
She actually did draft this house. My wife drew our freaking house, dude. I'm not a draftsman.
She did a good job. Yeah, you've got a nice shower. I know that much.
I do. I have a very nice shower, floater wall glass, man.
Yeah, it's nice.
But we forgot to put in 2 shower heads, and I'm kicking myself because.
Well, then you've just got to get closer to me. I guess.
That's true. But is that a good thing or a bad thing, though, for her?
It depends. For her, it's a bad thing. For me, they're nice. Yeah.
I don't know. It's. I want to ask everybody in here, what is the most important? If you had to pick one thing in SEO, what's the most important thing in SEO that you can do today? One thing only. Go.
Learn web design.
Okay.
Content optimization.
I like it.
Yeah, I second that.
Yeah, I concur with Clint.
What about you, Mikey?
I'm going to be fight Brad. Okay, that's what the answer was. No.
Kenny, I've got an extra pair of gloves picked out for you. We're going to by the way, I mentioned that I was going to have a chess match, and my oldest child, who watches YouTube from time to time, says, "You know what you should do?" I said, "What is that? Please tell me." He's like, "There's a thing called chess boxing." He's like, "You should do that." I said, "I love the idea. Kenny will be down. So maybe we have a chess boxing match." I'm going to have to look up how to do it.
I have to agree. I wanted to be cheeky and say data analysis, but I am going to say content optimization and point out what you all said.
One specific SEO skill, content optimization.
And that is content optimization, not necessarily on page. Content optimization, I think, is absolutely key to every aspect of SEO.
With just content optimization, that's where we've seen the largest bumps in taking on new clients is content optimization. So yeah, I guess I'll have to change my answer. I have made a lot of money being able to just shit out a lander and use web design.
See, you always think of it from a money standpoint.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of it from like the SEO aspect itself.
I could give two shits about SEO as long as I'm making money.
I know how you think, dude. But yeah, I would say content optimization if I'm talking about direct skills, like looking at something, being able to know how two pages need to connect to each other on both sides of that connection is utmost, in my opinion. And so understanding what builds a good piece of content now in Google's eyes in a post BERT world is super important for sure.
They need a BART update too.
You need a BART update. Corey left.
So does Corey. Yeah. Hate a poop.
We've got about 7 minutes left. I have a couple questions, so let's
We've got
see.
5 minutes left.
Is
4
it
and a half,
5?
actually. So
Well, actually, I have to look at my clock because I can't optimize a video without an hour on the clock, bro.
I know, but it says live for 55, 48, 49, 50. So that's what we should go
Mine
off of,
says
right?
53. My clock's all fucked up, dude.
Is that why we always go over?
I guess it is, man. Mine says 53.
To do. Go on.
Well, on that note, we had a question about
integrity
YouTube video. Clint, do you optimize your YouTube video? You just put it up, you throw it up, and go. Yeah.
Most of the time,
does anyone here optimize YouTube?
I mean, not on a continuous basis. I try and use best practices with the title. You're going to want to mention. Go and watch a Chris Palmer video, and it's clear how he articulates the integrity. That's the name of our group, integrity. But yeah, articulating the specific keyword that you want. Well, I got in trouble, Baba, because you said you liked me more than Mike, and because of my hands. And then Mike said you better not.
All the girls like Brad more because of his hands.
Until they meet me in person, and then they get a little
and they're
scared.
all tiny.
Yeah,
Hey there, little fella.
all palms. Yeah.
Is he coming?
Who?
The little guy.
Is that me?
No, Ryan Witten, man.
Dirty.
Oh, yeah, you know he's coming.
No, Dirty's gonna stand in for fight night, Mike. Brad.
Yeah.
Right on.
I'm down.
Internal anchor text, guys. Who has recommendations?
He would come to Greensboro just to punch me in the face. I know.
He would.
He's been waiting for years. Yes. Yeah.
We're
he's
flying out.
Been training.
Flying out together.
Yeah.
He has been.
Nice. Is he in your carry-on?
the tiniest little SEO.
It's got to fit under the seat in front of me. I can do that. Sir, your back is crying. It always does that.
Steve Boz Jones asked, "What is your best recommendation for internal anchor text?" A little loaded without knowing what's going on.
If you have to pick one, go title.
What about you, Clint?
I use exact match until it's not moving the needle anymore, and then I start using the entities that are on that page.
So when you say that, let's really specify. Are you talking contextual, modular, and how large is that if you're saying until it's moving the needle? Is it just the needle? And is it specific? Yeah, go ahead.
Every site has its own little like level of power. So like Digital Ear, I can do 4 to 5 pages internally with exact match, and it'll always move it up. At that point, it kind of stops or it goes slower. So I know when to stop using the exact match, and then I switch over to the entities. And the trick is figuring out what that number is for your.
When you say entity, are you just using brand name, or is that like
no, entities, persons, place, things, events, anything that's in
so
that
basically the match words is what I call match words, essentially. Anything that's related to the profile.
Okay.
Yeah. I used to use variations, but now we have variations and entities, so you just kind of mix that up, and that keeps
all these gurus changing the terms.
Yeah, well, we're good at that, right? We
are.
That's how you sell courses, right? I know you're not into selling courses, but yeah.
So I use my data for my internal link optimization. I use I use what search is telling me to do, to be dead honest, and we're gonna. Go ahead. We're going to look at that next week.
Soursop, had a, I think that's how you say that. Soursop? Soursop. Had a, best way to automate it, I probably wouldn't. You've just got to plug and chug in my
No,
opinion.
If it's
Never automate.
e-commerce, the best way to do it is your upselling widgets. So your
Yes.
similar
Yes.
products, your trending now, your complete the looks, your similar themes, like if it's puppy, here's puppy related products. All your upselling widgets are awesome internal linking.
And that's a good point,
user
Ted.
experience.
Because when I talk about letting Google do this for me, I'm talking about when I am in a phase 1 optimization and not in a phase 2 state with my content. There's a difference to me, and we'll be talking about the phases that we use next week.
By the way, speaking of next week, nfg2021.com, you can come hang out with us live, or you can watch it online. We're going to have I actually talked to Bill today. At the gym, he's
right on.
He is so worried about if we're gonna have to zoom anyone in, like Craig or someone that can't.
I think we'll just I can StreamYard them in, bro.
Yeah, but he was talking. He was going to go to the level. I had to rein him in a little bit. This is how in depth this guy is. He was going to send Craig a box for a direct connection.
Really?
Sure.
He doesn't want to deal with the internet. He wants to actually stream.
He was worried about that, but I said, "You're not mailing anything to Scotland. Don't worry about it that much. We can Zoom. We can
You're great. Here's a freaking piece of hardware, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And then
he's got hardware. He's got hardware over there.
Streaming in too.
That's what
Kyle's
I tried
got to stream in because he can't make it over. So, but we're gonna have Kyle there, and we'll have at the workshop somebody from the staff at least. I don't want to keep Kyle up too late. Told Craig I'm not going to keep him up too late, but they're going to be involved. The people that can actually make to be in person, but for those that are streaming from externally from from Australia or the UK or whatever, we're also going to be going over some stuff after the event as well to kind of
wrap everything up
and wrap it up for you. And I'm really excited this year. I'm really excited for Clint and Ted. Both of them really are doing things that I don't do, and I'm really looking forward to what Corey has. Actually, everybody that's talking this year really puts input into the process that we're using to make it better. Because the way I look at some of the stuff that Holly does as well, I don't do it the same way, but I do have sites that do the same things, and the benefit of those sites is exponential in my campaigns. So it'll be very interesting to see how the site responds to the mix of people's input that we're using, and we are using site in the crypto space, and so we're going for a little bit of higher competition level stuff. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good week. It's going to be a good conversation. I think with the internal linking to site, kind of sum it up though, I would be if you're automating it, automate it in a smart way and look at it like it can be automated to a certain extent. But there are some times where automation just does not make sense, right?
Yeah. I like to systemize it and maybe not as much automate it, that portion of it. I'll systemize it by having spreadsheets and knowing what I've linked where, being able to plug and chug and do it very quickly. But as far as grabbing a plugin and just throwing it on for the internal anchors, you probably
it only works. That only works for Wikipedia. You're not Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So be careful.
There's a lot of load there. If it's a small site, you also can get into some trouble potentially as well. And if it's a large site, you can get into potential. So it's really.
Well, if it's a small site, it shouldn't take long to run through the whole site too.
I don't know. I have my anchors automated. I don't have a problem with automated anchors myself. I wouldn't go out and do that like I think other people do it when they say, hey, how do you automate your anchors? Because when I'm automating my anchors, I'm tightly controlling my content groups before I automate my anchors anyways. So,
but you're not automating your internal linking. I think it has to do with is there a plugin you can put on a site that just goes and looks for a keyword and links it all to the whatever page?
There are.
That kind of thing.
There are. No, that'll break a site quicker than anything.
You know, the dude behind Link Whisper is a really solid ass SEO. He does a damn good job, and he does what Clint said about entity-based theory. That's kind of how that works there from what I understand. It's not something that I use. all the time. I do know that we have it running on some networks, I think. But I would, if you're automating your anchors, I would say that you need to be collecting data and you need to be grouping your pages with a purpose. And he says that I'm trying to automate the internal linking from what keyword Cupid gives me in working on way too many. So are you going to be at the event or streaming the event? Because that's automated. And if you want that, then you can come to the event and we'll get you doing that right away. So if you want to, that's 2021. There are ways to do it, but you got to program it. It's not out there to go grab. Like, we've written this shit over years. And so yes, you can automate based on your intent groups if you want. You can use intent-based breadcrumbs. There's a lot of stuff, but if I come into your site and I do SEO the way that I do SEO on a site without looking at it, and I tell you what to do on that site, and you do something completely different than I do, then my shit could fuck your shit up. Like, I'll tell you that. I don't believe that we all do SEO the same way. I don't think that Clint and I and Ted and I do SEO the same way. I don't think Corey and I do SEO the same way. Brad and I tend to somewhat, but not
I don't know. I don't know nearly enough to do things your way, Mike.
I don't know anything, bro. So you don't need to worry about it. But
he's not a player. He just talks a lot. Yeah. Good.
Exactly.
Kenny had a question about the event. Yeah, we're covering automation, aren't we, Mike?
Everyone knows that Brad's the brains behind that organization.
But we are so screwed.
Yeah, the sites are all automated, but the process doesn't change. And I think that's one thing that people need to understand, is that automation makes sense in certain places and at certain times. And then there's times where it just doesn't make sense. Like Ted mentioned automation that's a really good automation, which is your sales and your cross sells and your upsells. That's freaking great automation, because there's a lot of data you could power that with. There's sales data, there's SERP data. There's a lot you could power that with and build that automatically. There's some hands for everyone right there from Brad and I.
Catch these hands. Craig was going to. Too scared.
Ted, what are you talking about at the event, man?
Well, I was asked to go over Cora, but I know a lot of people already know about Cora. So I am blending it into a larger talk about how tools fail, and kind of how you can turn that to your advantage.
Awesome. And I'm really happy, because that's really where I wanted you to go, man. So I really appreciate that. Clint, what are you doing, brother?
Going over Schema, the importance of using it, and then you have that event site, and we're just going to go and write Schema.
We're going to do some of it.
Kind of show how easy it is.
We're going to try to take what's happened in order and go through the phases and kind of roll down the funnel like that. So, Corey, what are you going over, dude?
Going over really kind of the marriage of it's official between, it's always been a question, Google ads versus, how does it affect SEO? And I'm going to go into that. And I'm also going to go over how to rapidly deploy thousands of keywords and ad groups very quickly.
But isn't it just the credit card that you put into the system does all the magic?
Exactly.
I like that one a lot. Just put the credit card in and everything is trusted.
That's right.
I got stories about credit cards if you want to trust credit cards. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. Thank you for everyone in the audience. NFG 2021. If you are interested in streaming or coming live, if you can come live, please do. We've got people still coming live that are just finding out about it and jumping on.
I'm honestly pumped that we're doing it this way this year, because I'll be able to actually rewatch the presentations.
I'm looking forward to it.
Out on that.
The workshop day, if you can be at the workshop day, get live and be at the workshop day for sure. I know there are some things that people want to talk about in person, in private only. So if you can get there, do it. And if not, we will still get you the benefit of everything that is happening throughout the whole event, even if you're digital. So, but we have to do that in a secure manner for certain people. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. Bye.